Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first segment of the financial planning class through Discipleship Central Community Church. Not sure if I can see anyone in here yet, so we'll give a few minutes for folks to pour in before we get started. We'll give a couple minutes for some more folks to come in before we get started. Probably start in about 2 minutes. I'm used to being able to see people's faces whenever I do these broadcasts, so I can't see you guys on there, and I know you guys can see me, but I can't see you, so this is a little awkward for me. Forgive me in advance for any coughing. I've actually battled COVID this past week, and it has not been easy on my family, but thank God he's faithful and gracious and allowed me to recover from that, so I'm doing a lot better now, but still got a little bit of a cough, so I apologize in advance for that. We'll give just a couple more minutes for, actually maybe about another minute or so for more folks to come on in, and we'll get started. I guess I can give you guys a little bit of my background. My name's Darryl Mitchell. I'm originally from Cedar Hill, Texas, so right around the corner there from DC3. I'm living in Denton, Texas as of now, and I work as a financial advisor for a wealth management firm called Distinct Financial Solutions. Our firm's been in existence for about 18 years. I began my work here with the firm back in 2017, but I've been in the industry now for, 7, almost 8 years. Obtained my licenses from a major brokerage firm, and part of the reason that I started in this industry is because I saw a need that I had myself and that I realized my family needed, and I didn't know where to go to get answers. So I started looking at those answers for myself. Just to give you a little background about my family, I come from a line of business owners, and my grandfather was a business owner. My father was a business owner. My grandfather was a brilliant man. I mean, he would start businesses just because he was bored and get them off the ground and get them running. But he wasn't very good with his money. I mean, he was making well into $50,000 to $60,000 a month. This was in the early 90s that he was doing this. He was doing really well. But he got sick with prostate cancer, and when he passed away, he didn't even have enough money to pay for his own funeral. My father had to take out a loan to be able to bury him, and that was really, really eye-opening for me because it blew my mind that you could do this well and not have the provisions there. And my father had a little bit of a tough time. But as I started to, while he was in business, but as I started to seek out answers and discover things for myself, and now we've had a few conversations, and he's on the up and up and doing much better now. So seeing the things that they had to go through, seeing the things that my mother had to go through, it filled me with a desire to to find the answers. So I became what I wish somebody would have been to my grandfather while he was in business. And with as well as he had done, no one had showed him, making money is one thing, knowing what to do with the money you make is something totally different. So, and no one was there to kind of help guide him to help him show what he could have been doing with the money that he was making. So I grew up witnessing the very rough side of entrepreneurship and business ownership. My father was going a lot because he has to work, right? So, and there's also a difference between working in the business and working on the business. So that watching them growing up filled in me the desire to help people understand the big picture of what to do with the money that they're making, and then also to help business owners work on their businesses and not just in their businesses. So I spend a lot of my time putting together financial plans, and I run all the way from cash flow and and budgeting all the way up to retirement, income planning, and legacy and estate planning. I like to take an overall comprehensive approach to the things that we do with planning. So this will be 3 sessions that we will cover over the next 3 weeks. Today's session, we're going to be talking through budgeting and a little bit of debt management. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of today. I encourage questions along the way. There is a chat function here that you can type your questions into. But if I don't get to it, there is a Zoom link that will be provided to you that you can go on over to after the presentation is ended today. And I'll be there live to answer any questions that you might have. So today's session is going to be over budgeting. Next week, we'll talk through investing and insurance. And then the week after that, we'll talk through income, retirement planning, financial freedom planning, however you want to say it. But today we'll be covering budgeting. So hope you guys buckle your seatbelts and let's get right into this thing, okay? So I'm going to share my screen here with you. Okay, guys. So first step, actually, we're going to be talking between 2 screens today. This is a PowerPoint that there'll be a little bit of information on here, but I like to do a lot of drawing, so you'll see my drawing board as we go through today. And here's the first thing that I want to bring to your attention for today's class is when it comes to financial planning and every aspect of it, from budgeting all the way to investing, all the way to legacy planning. It really is about structure, how you set things up to put yourself in the best chance for success. And so I always ask people this question. I always say, if you had an opportunity to successfully put together a plan for yourself, and one plan showed that you had a 47% chance of success, and the other plan showed that you had a 99% chance of success, which one of those would you choose? All right. I'd be willing to bet that most of pretty much everyone would choose the plan that would give you the 99% chance of success. Most of today's information, or actually, let me say it like this. Most of your plan is going to be built around the structure to put you in the best position to gain success. It's usually not about the main kind of hot buttons that everybody likes to talk about day in and day out, although some of those things are included. But the main thing is setting yourself up and doing the right things, creating the right type of activity that's going to put you in the better chance of success from 99% versus the 47%. And I just chose 99% because obviously in life, nothing is absolutely guaranteed. But I want to spend the next 3 weeks with you going over things that are going to put your plan in a higher success rate. And those things, and I'll be up front with you and honest with you, those things usually not as glamorous. They're usually not as, attractive, or they're usually not as glittering as, glittering with gold and catches most people's eye. But those are the things that are time tested and proven over time, that if you do them consistently, they will put you in the best position to see the financial success that you need to see. And when I say financial success, I don't mean just a lot of money. What I mean by financial success is getting money to do what it needs to do in order for you to live within your purpose, right? Success is about purpose, about doing what you've been made to do, what you've been created to do, what you've been called to do, right? It's not just about the amount of money. Nobody wants to have a bunch of money so that we can just sit on a pile of cash and do nothing with it. We all want money so that we can do something with it. That's the goal, is that we want to be able to do something with it. So I define success as using money to walk in your purpose, and the God-given purpose that God has called you to do. Okay. So the very first part of this is you want to think of your financial plan and building wealth as a long-term building process. And it's going to be a combination of insurance, savings, and investments that accumulate over time. You start small and you set your foundation. And then as your career, income, everything progresses, you build on top of that foundation a solid structure to carry you the rest of the way. Okay, so you want to think of it as building a house. And now, I'm not a builder or anything, but if you asked me what I was doing this weekend, and I said, hey, I'm going to be building my new house, and you say, oh, great, Darryl, that's great. It looks like you can get that going. So if you come by and you see me down the street putting on the roof of the home before I'm setting the foundation, you might say to yourself, I'm not a home builder, but I don't think you're supposed to start with the roof. I think you're supposed to start with the foundation before you set everything on top of that. And that's the exact same concept when it comes to your financial plan. And so, again, we'll be going over budgeting today, but these are the areas that we're going to be covering over the next 3 weeks. And here's what I want you to notice about this. This house here is set with a foundation. You see these two outside corners here are savings and risks, right? Those are the biggest pieces of the foundation. You want to address those as best you can so that if anything goes on with the rest of this house or foundation, it can still stand, even though you have to deal with some of the turmoil that you may have to deal with throughout life. And my grandfather used to always say to me, "Through life is something that happens to you while you make plans." Right? We have no idea what life has in store for us. We can plan and we can do as best we can, but sometimes life throws curveballs at us that we just aren't prepared for, or we didn't see coming. So it goes back to setting yourself up with that 99% chance versus a 47% chance here. You want to do as best you can, setting your foundation as solid as you can in the beginning. That way, when you have to deal with things that you deal with throughout life, an unexpected emergency doesn't have to knock you down. I told you guys to forgive me in the beginning for coughing, so I'm doing my best not to cough. I've got my water here beside me, but hopefully it'll subside a little bit. So. Okay, so today when we talk about budget, we're going to be talking about a specific budgeting method called a zero balance budget, okay? And all a zero balance budget is just the idea of you telling your money what to do. So I'll pull up the screen here for you to see that, and we'll go through that together. And then we'll talk about the structure and system you can set up for yourself so that your budget can operate efficiently, even if something goes wrong, an emergency comes up. We'll talk about what it means to have an emergency fund, and then we'll talk a little bit about managing debt or debt management, because debt management is different from wealth management. Those are two different things. Debt management is one thing, wealth management is another. Okay. I don't think I've seen any questions up until this point, so I'll continue. Let me open up our budgeting template, and we'll go through that together. Just being upfront with you guys, this is so awkward and weird because I can't see any of you. All I can just see is the screen that I'm sharing with you. So I'm not used to that. So that's a little funny to me, but we're gonna keep it rolling. Okay, guys, here is the template that I'm going to show to you. As soon as I can get my computer to quit acting a little funky here. Okay, perfect. Okay, here we go, guys. This is the zero balance budget. Okay, and this document is called a financial map. This is what we use with all of our clients, regardless of if you have, $10 million, or like my old folks say, if you don't got a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of. All right, this is where we start with everyone. My first question usually with everyone that I meet with is, are you keeping a budget? Do you understand your cash flow, how much money you're spending versus how much money you're saving? And if they tell me no, then this is where we come to start the process, right? So the idea behind this financial map is the map tells you where you are, right? If you have a goal or destination that you're trying to get somewhere and you ask me for directions, one of the first questions I'm going to ask you is, well, where are you right now? And then I'll be able to tell you based on where you are, what steps you need to take to get to where you're going. It's the same concept within this financial map, right? On the left side here, you've got your balance sheet, which goes over all the assets that you have versus the liabilities that you'll have, and then your take home pay is listed would be listed here, and then on the right side is where the budget comes into play. Now, the budget is important. It is important, and I know it seems like probably really basic to a lot of people, but the budget is important. Hopefully, I just got a message that you guys. Hopefully, you guys can see my screen that I'm sharing. Let me see here. Okay, you got the screen share function. Okay, someone type into the chat and let me know whether or not you can see the Excel spreadsheet here. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. Can you see this Excel spreadsheet? Shaniqua, let me know if you can see this, if you can see my screen. Okay, sorry about that, guys. We just tested this before the class started and looked like everything was fine, and now for some reason you guys can't see my screen. Thank you for your message, Miss Marie. It says no, we can only see you. Okay. Let me see if I can fix that. Okay, Miss Marie, let me know if you can see can you see that? Can you see this Excel spreadsheet? Shanika, can you see it now? Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Hopefully, I'm not sure what was going on there, but hopefully everyone can see it now. Okay. So as I was saying, this is a financial map that we start with all of our clients. And the left side is the balance sheet. So this lists all of your assets versus your liabilities and any life insurance policies that you may have. And then the right side goes over your budget. Now your budget is important because if cash is like the lifeblood of your financial plan, then the budget is the veins, right? You want to know and be able to transport your cash to its correct destinations. Not only that, but when it comes to your retirement and your financial freedom, a lot of people don't realize that you need to be aware of how much you're going to spend in your retirement years and in your financial freedom years, and that is where you find your budget is where you find that out at. So it's a good idea to have a good practice of what your budget is, so that when you're planning to not have to work anymore, you want to know how much you're going to need to be able to spend. And so it comes full circle with your budget. Okay. All right. So here's the deal behind this is we always start with your income. So let's say you've got let's just say you make $5,000 a month, right? So we go in and put your $5,000 a month here, and let's say you've got a mortgage, and the mortgage is let's say $1,300 a month. All right. Now you make 5,000 so far. You spend 1,300. It means you've got $3,700 left within your budget each month that is unaccounted for. And the zero balance budget, the goal of this zero balance budget is for you to have a purpose for every single dollar that comes through your checking account. You don't want any dollars left unaccounted for within your budget, okay? So if you got 1,300 for your budget, and let's say groceries, you spend 300, and let's say to fill up your car every month, you spend 200 in fuel, and let's say your insurance is $150. You see what happens to the number here? You make 5,000. So far, we spent 1,950. You've got $3,050 left for that month that you have unaccounted for. So let's go in and put in some more. Let's go in and put in some more deals. So let's say your life insurance is $100 a month. Cable and internet is another $200 a month. All right. Let's say let's go in and put in a car note. Car note is $450. I don't know if everyone's got student loans, but let's say your student loans are $500 a month. Okay, so you make $5,000 a month. You spend $3,200 a month. You got $1,800 left. $1,800 left, right? So now you have to do something with that $1,800. It's not enough to say, "Oh, I have $1,800 left in my account for spending." That is good, but remember, making money is just one thing. Now you've got to know what to do with the money that you have left over. Okay, and this is where the zero balance budget comes in. And so when you look at your financial map, and what you do with the money that's left over is going to depend on each one's particular financial map. But when you look at your financial map, you have $1,800 left over. Then you got to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of this money that I have, right? And now you can't, excuse me, you can't go blow it all on just on personal spending. Right? But it is important that you have your own fun money spending category within your budget, right? So you want to put you want to have a category for your personal spending there. You want to have a category for your long-term savings, right? You want to have a category for debt service if you do hold any credit card debt or anything like that, right? And then there may be some other things that stick out to you that are short-term or long-term goals that you have. And if you know those things are coming up, then go ahead and create the space for them to save for them so that when the time comes, you'll have the money there to be able to do what you need to do, right? But some important items are you definitely want to have a category for yourself to reward yourself along the way, to have your own personal spending category there, your own fun money. You definitely want to have long-term savings that are going to be working towards your long-term goals. And I define long-term as usually anything that's over 3 years, right? And if you've got any debt that you need to pay, then you want to make sure you set aside some money each month to handle the debt service. And here's one thing that I'll point out about the actually I'll wait for the debt because there's another piece of this that I want to go over with you really quick. As you're putting in your expenses that you have on a monthly basis, it's a good idea. You don't have to do this step, but it's a good idea to separate your expenses out by variable expense and by your fixed expenses on a monthly basis. And variable means that that those expenses occur each month, but they change in value from month to month. So an example of a variable expense would be something like your groceries, something like your gas, your fuel for your car. Your personal spending is going to be a variable expense. You know you're going to spend something, but the amount that you're spending is going to change, right? And then fixed expenses would be something like your mortgage or your rent, your car note, things that are not typically going to change in value, but they do occur every single month. Having the extra breakdown of variable versus fixed expenses in your budget helps to identify when you have shorter overages in your months. And you can take that excess and carry it and move it over into another area of your budget. All right. So this is some of the structure that I mentioned. And then let's say for your variable expense, you typically spend 300 on groceries, right? But then one month you may only spend 250. Well, right off the bat, you know that you have a surplus of $50 for that particular month, right? So let's say we put in 250 instead of 300. Well, now that went from 1800 to 1850. Now that $50, you've got to do something with it. You've got to put it somewhere. It's not enough just to say I've got an extra $50, because if you don't give purpose to your dollars, then that is just delayed consumption. Eventually, you will find something to spend that money on, right? I know we've all been in situations where you look at your account and you say, "Oh man, okay, I'm doing pretty good," and a few weeks later, it's like, "Where did all my money go? What happened? I don't know what." So you want to give a purpose to every single dollar, and when you understand what your fixed and variable expenses are, and sometimes fixed expenses may change, or sometimes there may be a month where fixed expense is not there for whatever reason. But the budget that you have gives you the structure and helps you spot where those opportunities are. Or sometimes if you know you have an upcoming variable expense is going to be a little bit higher this month, say your electricity bill is higher in the summer months than it is in the winter months. Well, then you know to give more room for that item on your budget in those particular summer months, as opposed to your winter months, right? So let's go back to your discretionary, and this is called your discretionary income, the amount of money that you have left over after all of your necessary bills are paid. It's always a good idea to know what your monthly expenses are and what your discretionary income is going to be, because that gives you the pace at which you can save, which you can pay off debt, and which you can do everything else that you aspire to do. So if you've got this 1850 left over, then you assign a purpose to each one of these dollars that you have left in your discretionary income, right? And let's say you want to tackle some debt, then you can put $500 a month towards debt. Well, now you still have $1350 left over, so we've got to figure out what else we're going to do with that, right? Let's say you want to put $1,000 towards long-term savings. I'm just using that number just for the ease of the example sake. Well, now you've got $350 left, right? And let's say you got personal spending and you want to do $350 there. I see here the number that is left over is zero. That's where the term zero balance budget comes from. It's not that you don't have any money left over. It's just that you've allocated a specific purpose to every single one of the dollars that have gone through your checking account. Okay. Now, with that being said, the way that you break up, and I just picked these items here just for the sake of showing you guys how the zero balance budget works. But when you're looking at how much discretionary income you have left over, what do you do, or how do you know what to do with the amount of money that you have left over, right? And one of the things that I always say to people is that the longer amount of time you give your money to work for you, and you'll hear me say this throughout probably each of our sessions that we have, but the longer amount of time that you give your money to work for you, the harder that money is going to work for you over the long term. The shorter amount of time you give your money to work, the harder that you are going to have to work for that money. What that means is the longer amount of time your dollars are employed for you, your money doesn't get tired. It's going to produce more money for you over the long term, right? So you want to make sure that one of the areas that you give towards your discretionary income is going to be long-term savings, right? And that needs to be given the priority along with your emergency fund, right? That's one thing that we didn't put in there. So maybe I can adjust that here to 500. There you go. So long-term savings is a category you definitely want to give towards your budget, and you can go and be specific with what the long-term savings is going to be once you dive more into your plan. But you want to be putting dollars that are going to be working long-term for you somewhere, right? The other thing is your emergency fund. Now, the emergency fund in and of itself, and I got this from Dave Ramsey. Actually, I know a lot of you probably heard of Dave Ramsey, but he calls it the GOK fund, the God Only Knows fund. I like that name. It helps me to remember. remember easy. So the GOK, God only knows fund, the emergency fund. I can't tell you how many financial plans have been upset by just simply not having an emergency fund. And here's a cycle that most people get into. They usually have a bunch of debt that they're trying to pay off. They say, man, I've got to pay off this debt. It's driving me crazy. Right. And then they'll get into the cycle of putting all their discretionary dollars into paying off their debt, but they have no emergency fund. So what happens in life, right? Life's going to happen. Emergency comes along. There's no cash to take care of the emergency. Where are you going to get the money from to handle that emergency? You've got to go and charge up all the cars that you just paid down because there's no cash there. People get trapped in that cycle for years and years and years and years. And so what I tell people is, if you don't have an emergency fund, then make that your primary focus for your discretionary income, right? Even if you have debt that you want to pay off, that takes a back seat to establishing your emergency fund first. And sometimes it sounds so weird to people because, like, I got this debt, I want to pay it off. You will pay it off. You will pay it off. But we want to set up your plan and your system to where it serves you best long term, so that when, not if, when other emergencies come along, that you have the cash to handle that and not have to go back and erase all the hard work you've done with paying off all that debt, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Drop a question if you've got it. Where you give your priority to your emergency fund. And a good place to start with your emergency fund is, if you don't have it, save up $1,000. Let that be your first goal for your emergency fund. And once you reach that first $1,000, then maybe you go and attack, a credit card if you have that, or a small loan that you have, and attack that, and then go and continue to build up your emergency fund until you get to about 3 months worth of cash. And depending upon what type of profession you're in or what you do, what your career is, it might be wise to have a little bit more than 3 months. But I usually say not more than 3 months worth of cash in a savings account, somewhere that you can get access to. You don't necessarily need a debit card to it, something that will tempt you to use it, but somewhere that you can get access to the cash, within a couple of days, to take care of an emergency that you have, right? So emergency fund gets most of the attention if you don't have that already. Okay. The next category you want to give yourself, and I already mentioned this, is the long-term savings. Start yourself off with some I don't care if it's $5 a month. Just start somewhere with some long-term savings somewhere. Get yourself used to the habit of putting money aside and not being able to touch it for an extended amount of time. And the reason for that is what I mentioned to you earlier. The longer amount of time you give your dollars to work, the harder that money is going to work for you. So what you want is, if you're in a situation where you're trying to pay down debt, trying to save, and trying to invest long term, after you've given your priority to your emergency fund and you've got that set away, then you start giving priority to your long-term savings. Doesn't mean that you don't pay off any debt. It just means that you carve out somewhere in your budget to give yourself some long-term savings so they can work for you over the long term. Because what you want your balance sheet to do is, you want your liabilities to decrease and your assets to increase over time. But your assets are never going to increase if they're not working. So you've got to get them started working sooner than later. And then what you have left in your discretionary income, then you can start giving towards paying off your debt. And here's the thing: when it comes to paying off debt, is you always I know you guys have heard of the debt snowball. Here's another trap that people get into, is they have this debt going on and they're trying to make all these payments at the same time. Excuse me. They're trying to make all these payments at the same time, and it's killing their cash flow because there's not much else they can do because they're trying to pay it off. It's almost like putting out a fire and putting out a flood at the same time. Well, you've got to choose one or the other first so that you can take care of the other. So if you've got a long list of debts that you're trying to tackle, then tackle the smallest ones first, the smallest ones with the highest interest rates first. Tackle those down while paying the minimum payments on everything else. Okay. Tackle the smallest debt with the highest interest rate first. Pay the minimum payments on everything else. And I know you're hearing that and saying minimum payments. You're not gonna cover any ground if you're making minimum payments on everything else. Yes, I know, but the goal for budgeting is more consistency than anything else. So you want to be consistent in your savings for your emergency fund. You want to be consistent in your long-term savings. You want to be consistent in your debt payoff, and this gives you the ability to pay off each debt one at a time without overwhelming your cash flow and your discretionary income, so you can still tackle and hit all of your other goals at the same time. All right. So if you let's say you've got 5 credit cards, and the balance on card one is $100. The balance on card two is $500. The balance on card three is 1,000, and the balance on card four is 1,500, and balance on card five is 2,000. Right. So you start with a $100 card while paying the minimums on everything else. Once that card number one is paid off, you take what you were paying on that card one and you add it to the minimum payment that you were paying on card two. And you still pay the minimums on cards 3 through 5, right? But now you've paid off card one, you've added that to on top of your payment for card two. You're paying the minimums on everything else. You're still saving for your emergency fund. You still got your long-term savings going. I don't even care if it's $5 a month. It's still long-term savings that you started with, right? And then once card one is paid off and you paid off card two, now you take what you were paying on card one, you take what you were paying on card two, and you add that to card three. All right, you add that to card three. So now you're doubling up, tripling up on card three. You still have your emergency savings. You still have your long-term savings. You still have your personal spending. And you know the rest of this, right? Pay off card one. You tag on card two to that. Once card two is paid off, you take card one and what you're paying on card two, pay that to card three. Once card three is paid off, you take what you were paying on card one, take what you were paying on card two, take what you were paying on card three, and then pay it all on card four, right? Still paying the minimum payments on card five while you're tackling that card number four. And all along the while, you're still building your emergency fund savings, and you still have your personal spending, you still have your long-term savings. And it may take a little longer to pay off some of the debt this way, but this is a system that is sustainable for you. That way, if you run across an emergency along the way, you would have had the cash to build up to take care of your emergency without interrupting the flow that you're giving towards paying off your cards there. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Let me now I can't see your questions while I'm sharing my screen. So let me stop this share for a moment and see if we have any questions that have come up. Can you email this worksheet to us? It's very blurry for you. I apologize about that. This is Hazard. I will email that worksheet to you, and I'll also if you have questions about it afterwards in the Zoom chat, I'll answer any questions that you may have. Miss Marie, I will send you that spreadsheet also. All right, no other questions. So let's hop back on the screen share. Hopefully, me stopping it didn't mess something up. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the screen share again. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we went over zero balance budget, making sure you understand what your cash flow is and what your balance sheet is. So you want to, again, write out all of your assets, everything that you own that is worth something, and then everything that you owe that you're paying on. Write those things out, understand the relationship between those two things. And then for your budget, write down what your income is on a monthly basis, and then write down what your expenses are on a monthly basis. And then the difference that you have left over, that's going to be your discretionary income. That's the amount of money that you have left over after all of your necessary bills are paid. Once you know what your discretionary income is, then you give room to three things off top. Is your emergency fund, if you don't have that established already, your long-term savings, start even if it's just $5, start with that. And then how you're going to pay off your debt if you have any of that, right? Oh, then also what we covered is your variable expenses versus your fixed expenses. You want to have a good idea of what expenses change on a month-to-month basis, so that if you have a surplus or a shortage, you can look within your budget structure and know where you can pull from to cover for that month, or you know where to apply the surplus in that month if you have a bill that's not as expensive as you thought it was going to be for that particular month. Okay. And when it comes to these three categories, your emergency fund, your long-term savings, and your debt payoff, always give priority to your emergency fund first. You want to make sure you have cash in place somewhere for an emergency. If an emergency happens, then you'll be able to handle that without going and having to charge up any more debt. Establish your long-term savings. Again, I'm keep saying this. I don't care if it's $5 a month, whatever it is. Start now with something that you can be consistent with. Don't bite off more than you can chew and say, if I've got $1,850 left over after my bills, I'm going to start my long-term savings with $1,500. That's not. The goal for this is for you to be consistent, and you build upon those things as you go. Okay. Now, here's the other portion of this that I want to mention when it comes to debt management versus wealth management. Now, think of debt management as a piece within the overall wealth management play that you're going to be creating. And notice when I mentioned earlier that I said you pay the minimum payments on larger debts while you're tackling your debt snowball, and you give your long-term savings some priority by even if it's with just $5. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the longer amount of time you give your money to work, the harder it's going to work for you, right? Don't get caught up in letting debt overwhelm your budget. And let's take it to a different kind of debt. Let's say it's your mortgage, right? Or maybe it's a car that you decide to finance over a particular amount of time. Here's what I want you guys to understand about debt. Debt is simply the cost of time measured in dollars, right? Debt is the cost of time measured in dollars. The only reason, now this is after the idea that you paid off all your credit cards, and we're talking about like student loan debt and mortgage debt and stuff like that. The reason why you took out the debt, and let's use a mortgage for an example, a house. The reason why you take out that debt, one, just to say this, is that anytime you take out debt, for one, you want it to be because there's going to be an asset that you're building alongside of it, right? That's the reason why mortgage would be considered good debt in a sense, because most people use their house as an asset, which is another conversation. But for today, we'll leave it as such. All right. So debt is the cost of time measured in dollars. The primary reason why you would ever want to use debt is because there's an amount of time that you want to access. Right. You want to access someone else's money so that you can have that money for a certain amount of time. Now, what you do with that time is crucial because that's what you're paying for. Right. I've heard. I came across this meme the other day, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, that talked about how a couple that had paid off a house in 5 years, and that is a great accomplishment. That is something that is definitely to be celebrated. But it depends on your financial map, what the rest of this stuff looks like, as to whether or not that'll actually be beneficial for you, because you want to use debt the appropriate way, right? You want to think of debt as what's the example I used the other day? Think of debt as a butter knife, and you use a butter knife to cut butter, right? Now, what if you were to attempt to use that butter knife to cut down a tree? Most of us would say that's pretty crazy. You probably could eventually cut down a tree with a butter knife, but you'd have to go through a lot of butter knives, and it would probably be very painful to your hand in trying to do that, right? That's what I mean whenever I say debt is the cost of time measured in dollars. If you and I'm going to use the example of paying off the house in 5 years. The reason you take out the debt for a mortgage to purchase a house is because you did not have all the money at the time of the purchase of the house, right? Now, what I usually ask people is, why don't you just wait to pay cash for the house? Why don't you just wait 5 years to pay cash for the house, right? Well, some people would say, well, I didn't have all of the money up front to be able to do that. Of course you didn't, right? So you wanted to use someone else's money, the mortgage, to acquire the house so that you can have time in the house right now. It's the time that you're paying for. Okay, so if you've got this tool that you're this debt that's a tool that you're paying for time, right? Then why would you then go and take that time that you just paid for, use the time that you paid for, and go back and pay all down on the debt for the mortgage that you have? Hopefully you're following and that makes sense to you. The main reason you use debt is for time. So you want to use that time that you have, not necessarily go back and pay down all the debt unless there's something about your financial map that suggests so. But that's usually not the case. We've worked with our firm typically works with people who have a net worth of maybe about 15 and 20 million and under, because they're just a pretty largely underserved demographic, which was wild to me to think whenever I first got in the industry, because I'm thinking that many people have 15, $20 million and can't get any attention from someone, but it's true. Out of all the people that we've worked with, I've only known one person to pay cash for a house. Even if they had the money, even with all the other people that had the money to do it, they still. I've only known one person to pay cash for a house, and he actually paid cash for 2 houses within a year's time frame. It was crazy, but his financial map suggested that he should do it, right? So even though there are people that can pay cash for a house, but they don't do it because they want to use the time. The cost of debt to them is inexpensive, so they go and use that time to build other assets, and then those assets then go and pay and service the debt that they've used in securing the house. So to be more specific, they finance a house because the interest rate is cheap, and they have this amount of time that they have access to the bank's money to pay for this house. They then go and use that time, instead of pouring all that money back into the house. They then go and use that time in their own money to build up assets that will grow and generate an income for them, or grow money over long term. And then they will take the excess of what they've earned from their assets and then use some of that to pay down on the debt, right? And they still have their time, they still have their debt being paid, and they still have an asset that's growing for them over the long term, right? And that is called opportunity cost, right? So if you have, let me see here, hopefully this will work. Here we go. Okay. If you have a house and that house note rates are pretty low, so let's say 3%. Okay. And you've got that for 30 years. Okay. Now you take your cash that you've been earning, and you've done your financial map, and you know what your discretionary income is, and now you've been able to build up your long-term savings columns. Now you're dumping a bunch of money in your long-term savings area, right? Well, now you put that money into some investment, whether it be real estate or whether it be a business or whether it be whatever it is, and let's say it gives you a return of 7%. Okay. Well, you're earning 7% here. The mortgage is costing you 3% there. You still have a net of 4% per year of money that you're earning. So now you have time in your house. You're building an asset, right? You're still paying on your mortgage, and you walk away with a net of 4%. This net of 4% over long term, over 30 years, that is a lot of money. And that's how much you're giving up whenever you don't handle your debt, your mortgage the appropriate way. Okay. So you want to make sure that if you're going to have a mortgage, if you're going to finance a car, if you're financing education, if you're financing a business, this is not new to business concepts at all. You've got a viable business idea, you're already starting to make some money, but you need access to capital to grow your business, right? Well, then you continue to invest in your business. You continue to invest in things that grow money for you over long term, and then you use the excess to pay on your debt for you. And doing it. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to stop my screen share again and see if we've got any questions. because I cannot see the questions at the same time that I'm sharing my screen. No questions. Okay. Here's the last point that I'll drive home. Here's the last point that I'll drive home with you guys. Hammer down on the debt management again. Our system uses something called fiat money, which is what the dollar bill is. Dollar bill is not necessarily worth anything. It's paper, right? Well, you guys know what the term inflation means, right? Which means that over time, the amount of dollars that you have, especially when the government prints more money, each dollar becomes worth less than it was, the day before. Okay, so, and this is just to drive home the debt management again, is that when your fiat money becomes worth less over time, it looks like this. It becomes worth less and less over time. When you don't make your long-term savings a priority for yourself, you are then waiting to use dollars that are going to be worth less to save for yourself. And if you use all of your money to pay off debts first without taking care of yourself, you're using dollars that are worth more now to pay off someone else, and you're using dollars that are worth less in the future to pay yourself. This is the reason why, and this has happened to a particular group of people before when talking with them. This is why, if you wait, let's say I don't know the ages of all the participants today, but let's say you're 35 years old. This is why, if you wait until you're age 50 to start saving for yourself, it's going to take a lot more money to accomplish the same thing that you would with a lesser amount of money if you would have started at age 35. All right. So it's important for you to understand the concept of budgeting so that you know what your structure is. And it's important for you to understand the concept of snowballing your debt if you have it. And it's important for you to understand the concept of time as it relates to dollars, so that you can make sure you're using some of your dollars to create wealth for you over the long term, and you can still service your debt. One other thing I want to give you before we end today and go to the Q&A is the other important point about budgeting I want to point out is that a budget is just a system for you, right? And it's important that you have a system working on your behalf, because sometimes life gets a little overwhelming and you still want your system to operate efficiently for you, even if something in your personal life is off. And one of the ways that I always suggest people setting up their structure and systems is, let's say you get paid in your main checking account, right? Your money comes to your main checking account. Okay. Don't pay all of your bills out of your main checking account. Set yourself up a bill account. And every time you get paid and you know bills are going to come, then you set money for your bills inside your bill account and set up all your auto pays from your bill account. Right? And then set yourself up a personal spending account that's different from where you pay all of your bills out of. Okay, and then set up a separate account for your emergency fund. Don't keep your emergency fund in the same place that you spend all of your personal money. And the same thing with your investing account. I even have clients that have travel accounts. And you don't have to have all these accounts if you don't want to. But me personally, we have a main checking account where our pay comes into. You have a bill account, and then we have our personal spending accounts. We have a house account. I've got 2 baby girls, and we love buying them toys and stuff like that. They're 3 and 2 years old. And if things come up like diapers, because my youngest one is taking her time potty training, we got to run and make diapers or something like that. Then we have separate accounts where those things come out of, so that it doesn't interrupt our flow in our system for how we're doing everything else. And that is a huge benefit to you if you don't have a structure like that already. At the very least, have yourself your main checking account where your pay comes into, your bill account where you pay all your bills out of, your emergency fund, and your spending account. And that alone takes off a lot of the work. That takes a lot of the work off your shoulders and trying to keep up with everything. If you put all your personal spending money in your personal account, then you don't have to try to itemize each thing that you buy every single day. You know your personal spending money is here in this account, and when that runs out, I'm out of personal money, right? When your bill account, when bills coming up, you don't have to worry about, oh, I spent $10 more than what I should have, and now my bill is going to be. If you put all your money in your bill account, then that helps keep your records clean and help keeps your system flowing for you, so that you don't have to do all of the heavy lifting. All right, your budget is a system that's meant to do the heavy lifting for you, and then you're just allocating dollars to the appropriate places. Okay. All right. We have come to the end of today's session in time. I'm going to stop my screen share here. Hopefully today's session has been helpful to you. I'm here in my home office, and hopefully you guys didn't hear my girl screaming in the background. But we'll head on over to the Zoom link. If you've got any questions there, please meet me there, and we can talk through any other questions you may have. I'll be able to answer some things specifically for you within that Zoom link. But thank you for spending the time with me today. Next week, we're going to be talking about investing in insurance. There's going to be some really good stuff there. We're going to continue to build on top of the information that we started with today. So have a very, very blessed day. Again, my name is Darryl Mitchell, and come over to the Zoom link and we can talk more there. You guys take care.